Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Holistic Chef uh, cooking demonstration for Bauman College. And so before I pass it over to Chef Martina, we're going to just give you a little overview of today. So I know some of you are actual current students coming in too. So we also have a lot of people here today who are looking into the program for the first time. So welcome to everyone. First, the staff will introduce ourselves, and then what we'll do is I'll pass it over to Chef Martina after that. And then after our cooking demonstration, that'll be the main, like I would say, like the first hour. The last half hour is going to be information about our program. So for those of you who are here, who are looking into our program for the first time, not yet students who are here to also get information on the curriculum, scheduling, cost, financial aid. That'll be the last part of our webinar, and we'll have a Q&A question and answer session as well. So with that, first the staff will introduce ourselves and then Chef Martina can take it over. So I'm Michelle, I am in admissions. So welcome everyone, I'll pass it over to Joe.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joe. I'm an admissions representative at Bauman College, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Samir.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samir Ahmed. I'm one of the financial aid administrators here at Bauman College. You'll see me for a little bit, and then my partner, Mariana, will be joining on for the last bit of our appointment. I'm going to pass it off to Chef Martina.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Chef Martina. I'm one of the holistic chef instructors here at Bauman College. So if you were to join our program, you would be seeing quite a lot more of me. Today, we are going to be making a really wonderful recipe. It's a Pavlova. And what's great about the Pavlova is it's just really light and lovely. I don't know if any of you were in here before we started recording, but I'm just talking about all of the beautiful berries that we can see in the farmers markets, in grocery stores these days. So this is a great light dessert that uses very little sugar. So really great recipe. But before we get started, one of the things that we do in all of our classes is just sort of starting with a few grounding breaths. It brings us into the present moment. It allows us to kind of let go of anything in the beginning part of the day that we don't need to worry about in this little time and space that we have together. So if you want to, you're welcome to keep your camera on, or if you feel more comfortable, you can also turn it off for the time being, but just settle in to a little space of stillness. If you have any tension in your shoulders or your neck, feel free to gently, gently roll that out. Just taking nice, deep breath, really filling up that belly and exhaling, just letting go of any nerves, any feelings, anything that you don't need to carry right now. With each deep breath in, just remembering that this is a safe space, a place for curiosity, for learning, and we're all here together and all here to support each other. Just every inhale, bringing in all of that wonderful energy. And every exhale, just letting go a little. And take one more big, deep breath. And on the exhale, feel free to come back. Wonderful. So just a really nice way to sort of ground yourself, make yourself present, open to learning, open to new experiences. All right, and then now we get to jump into the fun part, which is cooking. So for our Pavlova today, I'm going to be making sort of a traditional Pavlova, but in a slightly untraditional way. Normally, you would be using sort of refined cane sugar to make this recipe, to make the stabilized meringue, also to, macerate your berries. But as a holistic chef, one of the things that we like to do is incorporate more nutritive ingredients. So things like honey as a sweetener is great. We have extra minerality, beautiful vitamins, antioxidants. So using some of those alternative ingredients to get that holistic experience and those holistic recipes. All right, so I'm going to switch down to my cutting board just so that you can see what I'm doing here. So first things first, we want to make sure we preheat our oven to about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have an oven that naturally cooks a little bit hot, hotter, you can actually turn it more to about 250, 275. If your oven just is a little bit slower, around 300 degrees Fahrenheit is going to be perfect. So we want to get that preheating if you're cooking along with me. If you're just taking notes, make a note to preheat your oven, okay? Then
And
what we want to, yeah, go
can I
ahead.
spotlight your video for everyone to see too?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wonderful.
Perfect. Didn't mean to interrupt, but there we go. Go on.
All right, perfect. So this is basically where I'm going to be baking off my pavlova. So I have just a standard sheet pan, nice and big, and then I have a piece of parchment paper here. Now, if I want to have a really regular shape for my pavlova, if I'm trying to get really consistent, if I'm making multiple of these, for my business, one of the things that I can do is I can use a cake pan to be my guide. So if I take on my parchment sheet just a marker, I'm going to mark around using about an 8 or a 9-inch cake round, which is going to give me a really great base for my pavlova. Now, we obviously don't want to get any of this Sharpie on the bottom of our egg white. So what we can do is flip it over. You can still see the outline of the circle, but there's no chance of that ink bleeding through. All right, so we'll move this out of the way now that we have our prepared pan. And we're going to start making our meringue. So for our meringue, we need eggs. And specifically for the meringue, we want to use just the egg whites. What's really great about this whole recipe is that we're using every part of everything that we have. So I'm going to save the egg yolks because that's going to go into our coconut custard that I'm making to top our pavlova. All right. So we want to go ahead and save our egg yolks in a larger bowl just to set that off to the side. And then our egg whites we're going to save and use for a meringue right now. So cracking your eggs. I know that this sometimes can be a little bit intimidating. What I do find is that a lot of people will crack their eggs on the side of a bowl. This actually gives you the higher chance of getting shells or a broken shell into your mixture. So instead of cracking on the edge of the bowl, crack on a flat surface. So we're going to tap it a few times, break it just right in half, and then separate those egg whites from those egg yolks, again, using those shells to kind of tip it back and forth to just get all of that egg white off. And then plopping our egg yolk over into our bowl. Again, cracking on that flat surface, using the egg shells to just separate those two items. You can also use your hands if you'd like, but I found that using that eggshell makes things a little bit less messy. Again, just cracking on that flat surface. And what's really wonderful, again, about this dessert is that we have so many great ingredients in it. So eggs themselves are so full of just really beautiful protein. They have lots of healthy fats in them, so omega-3s, fatty acids, and also really packed with vitamins. So in our eggs, both in the yolk and the white, we have vitamins A, vitamins D, and vitamin E. Okay. So really high protein in our whites, which is why they make such beautiful meringue. That protein gives it structure when you whip it up. And then all of our beautiful healthy fats and nutrients in our yolks. So we'll set these yolks to the side for now. And then I'm going to switch over to my mixer. So just using a standard KitchenAid mixer, you can also use a hand beater or you can whisk them by hand if you would like a really epic workout. But we want a balloon whisk, an attachment that's going to aerate our egg whites. We'll go ahead and put those 4 egg whites we just separated out into our bowl. And then what we want to add to this is just a little bit of salt. It's about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And what that salt is going to actually do is give us a little bit of protein coagulation. And what that means is that we're going to sort of solidify those proteins so that they hold a little bit more structure. Okay? The other ingredients that I'm going to be using are, for my recipe, I actually have this beautiful honey powder. So it's crystallized honey. You can also use liquid honey. And if you're using liquid honey in this recipe, you'll go ahead and add it to your egg whites now. If you're using a granulated or a crystalline sweetener, then we'll sort of put it in after we get those eggs to a nice foamy stage. Okay? And then the last ingredients that we're going to fold in after we get those beautiful stiff peaks, we have a little bit of tapioca starch. That's going to give us, again, a little bit more structure. We have some flavoring, just a little bit of vanilla extract, and a little bit goes a long way. And then again, a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And again, just like our salt, that vinegar is going to help coagulate those proteins and give us a little bit of structure. Okay. All right, so we're going to go over to our mixer and we're going to whip this on high. What we're looking for our meringue, before we add in our sugar, we want to make sure that we've gotten our eggs to a nice sort of foamy consistency. I don't want them to be stiff peaks yet, but I do want them to have a little bit of fluff, a little bit of aeration, so that when I start incorporating my sugar slowly, it just continues to build that volume. All right. So just waiting for it to get a little bit foamier, getting a little bit more of that aeration, but you can see how already it's almost doubled in size. All right. Okay. So you can see here now we have this really beautiful foamy structure. It's still very liquid, still pourable, still kind of moves around really gracefully. So very liquid still, but nice and aerated. So this is the point when we want to start adding in our sugar. Okay. So this is what we call a French meringue, where we are just adding in our crystalline sugar to raw egg yolks or egg whites. There are a few different other kinds. The Swiss meringue you cook prior to whipping, or the Italian meringue, you'll actually use a sugar syrup heated up to then stabilize your egg whites. All right, so we're going to go back to high and then just ever so slowly kind of pouring in our honey powder a little bit at a time, just to build that volume, get a little bit of that shine, and just help us develop that beautiful aeration in our meringue. You can see it's starting to form these sort of soft peaks, stabilizing with that addition of the honey powder. And just adding a little bit at a time, letting it do its thing. All right, so now we've added in all of our honey powder, and I just want to show you. So we have now these beautiful stiff peaks. So it means that your egg whites are nice and shiny. They're holding a really beautiful stiff peak and holding that texture. If I wanted to, I could flip the bowl over and put it above my head. I'm not going to do that right now, though. But that is a really good test. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put it on our prepared sheet pan after we mix in those last few ingredients. So I want to get it off of my mixing bowl. Okay. Again, you can see them here a little bit, just these beautiful stiff peaks, just adding that sugar. You have that wonderful salt in there that's helping those proteins coagulate a little bit. So we're getting really beautiful aeration and structure. All right. So then now we want to add in those other stabilizing and flavor ingredients. So we're going to add in that little bit of tapioca starch, just about a tablespoon. You could also use an arrowroot starch if you'd like. We're going to add in that apple cider vinegar and just a little bit of vanilla extract for flavor, okay? And then we want to use a folding motion. Now, folding, you're trying to be as gentle as possible so you don't lose any of that air that we just worked so hard to get. So going around the circumference of the bowl and then cutting through the middle. So kind of folding instead of a really aggressive whisk or a stir, just gently, gently kind of cutting through, going around the circumference, and gently getting all of those ingredients incorporated. Okay. So you can see we still have beautiful aeration. We aren't losing any of those beautiful air bubbles. Great. And now we're going to put that onto our prepared pan. So again, we have our little ring turned upside down, so we're not going to get any bleed through of our Sharpie on our Pavlova, but it's going to be a really great guide for us to make that really nice round shape. So I'm going to just start piling up my meringue. And you can see how nice and shiny it is, how it's holding its shape really well. That's that slow addition of sugar and really allowing it to aerate even before you incorporate that sugar. So then we're going to go ahead and just try to tampen it down on the sides just to fill up that round. First getting around the edges, and then we can make some fun little flourishes to give it a little character. So some little swoopies, that's the technical term. So just some nice little divots. We want to try to build up the edges just a little bit more so that once it bakes, our berries kind of have something to hold them in the center. Okay. So make a little bit lower in that center and a little bit higher on the edges. Make some nice little swoops. All right, so then this is going to go into our oven. Again, either that 250 degree to 300 degree oven, depending on where your oven rests. And we're going to put this in the oven for about an hour. So it's going to go, it's going to bake, it's going to still be nice and marshmallowy in the center. And then once you get done with that hour, you'll turn off the oven and actually let it cool with the oven. This will allow that meringue to get nice and crispy on the outside, but still be nice and marshmallowy on the inside. Okay, I'm going to just put this in my oven. Again, set a timer for an hour. Don't worry, I have one made already, so we're going to have some movie magic so I can put it all together. All right. So again, for this meringue, I use the egg whites, I use the honey powder. You can also use liquid honey, like a raw honey, which is really beautiful, full of, again, probiotics. It's antibacterial and antifungal, and it's actually a little bit lower on the glycemic index than sugar is. So if you have somebody that has blood sugar regulation issues, using honey in place of a white or cane sugar actually will allow their blood sugar to not spike quite as quickly or heavily. Okay? You can also, if you're plant-based, make a meringue out of what we call aquafaba. So that's the liquid from beans, generally chickpeas, because they're of a more mild flavor. So you can use canned chickpeas. Just one of the things that you want to remember is that a lot of those canned chickpeas, canned beans are cooked and pressure cooked in a can. So you have all of those anti-nutrients that are kind of swimming around in that liquid. But Eden brand foods has really beautiful beans and they're cooked with kombu. So it actually can help a little bit with digestibility and it creates really lovely aquafaba. So you can whip that sort of chickpea liquid with sugar and create a plant-based meringue, which works really well for this as well. Okay.
Bike month, walk and bike month, which is June.
Oh, right.
So there were a lot of great events that took place all month.
So
we have another week of events to go.
Now we have, we're going to be switching gears to our custard. So the next item that we're going to be making is our coconut custard. Now this is really beautiful. Again, if you want to make it fully plant-based, you can make your meringue with aquafaba. But I love making this as a dairy-free, gluten-free dessert. So coconut milk, really rich, really high in fat, really beautiful and beneficial. And the other ingredients that we're going to be using are our egg yolks, those that we saved from our egg whites. Okay. We're going to, again, use a little bit of local raw honey instead of that honey powder. And what's really great about that raw honey, again, with those antiviral, antifungal properties, it's also a little bit sweeter. Raw honey is going to be a little bit sweeter than just a standard honey or even sugar, like a cane sugar. So you don't need to necessarily use quite as much in your recipe while still getting the benefits of that little bit of sweet. We're also going to use, again, a little bit of vanilla extract, some salt for flavor. And a lot of people ask me, why do you use salt in your desserts? Well, salt brings flavor. So what's really great about adding salt to any meal, whether it's sweet, spicy, is that it's going to tie all of those flavors together. It's going to bring them together in this beautiful harmony so that all of those flavors kind of hit your tongue, hit your taste buds, and brings everything together. So don't forget your salt in your desserts. Very important. All right. So back to our ingredients. The only thing that we need to prep is I have this wonderful lemon. We're going to use the lemon zest to finish off and sort of brighten up this custard. And then we'll use the lemon juice to help season our berries. So I'm just going to use a microplane. Just going to get that really beautiful and vibrant zest. And we're going to set that off to the side because that will go in our custard when we're done cooking it. All right, got a little bit on the cutting board, get all of that good stuff in the bowl. All right, so then now we're going to do is gently heat up our coconut milk, our flavoring, our salt, and our sweetener. So I've got a can of that full fat coconut milk. And the full fat is really important because the fats in there are going to sort of bind together with the egg yolks, create a really creamy and luscious custard. We'll add in our vanilla extract, and our salt, and our honey. And because, again, we're using that raw honey, don't need much, just about a tablespoon, just enough to kind of sweeten that naturally sweet coconut milk and kind of bring it up to dessert level. All right. So then now we're going to move this over to a burner. Just going to heat it up on a medium-low heat. We don't want our flame to be too high because we don't want this to come to a boil. We really just want to get it to a nice steam, to have our honey and salt dissolve into our coconut milk. So we're just going to let that go at about a medium-low, just until it's steaming. All right, wonderful. So what's really nice about this is this Pavlova is extremely versatile. That's one of the things I said in the blog, if you had the chance to read it. But you can really make it different, make it your own every single time you make it, depending on what toppings you use. So the base of it is that gorgeous meringue, that sort of marshmallowy and crispy meringue. And then you can top it with things like coconut whipped cream or standard whipped cream, a dairy. You can add any kind of local fruits. So depending on what season it is, you could do berries, you could do stone fruits later in summer, but just really making it your own every single time you make this. So what I'm doing now, I'm heating up all of my liquid ingredients. Okay, so what we're doing is making a stirred or cooked custard. So I want to heat up all of these liquid ingredients just for a bit so that I can then temper them into my egg yolks. Okay, and what tempering is a process where we slowly introduce a hot liquid to our colder egg yolks so that it doesn't shock them. We don't want to put the egg yolks directly into this hot liquid because then it'll scramble them. It'll make the liquid chunky, won't be a really nice texture. So instead, we want to kind of do this process where we add just a little bit of that hot liquid to our egg yolks and then introduce it back to that main batch. It allows us to keep a really silky and smooth custard and not get those scrambled eggs. All right, so we're getting close. And if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or even just unmute and ask your questions as I'm going. I know I talk a lot, but if you have any questions as I'm speaking, please don't hesitate to ask. All right, so we're getting close. I'm noticing on the bottom, I'm starting to feel some bubbles as I run my spatula along there. So it doesn't take too long. Once we start feeling just that little bit of simmering, you can see here, we've got that little bit of heat. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my heat and move back over to my cutting board where I have my egg yolks ready to go. So I'm going to break my egg yolks, just whisk them up. And then we're going to just lightly pour in a really steady and small stream, a little bit of that hot liquid just to start. Again, just introducing that heat to our egg yolks so we don't curdle them. We don't want any scrambled eggs today. That's a different class. All right. So then slowly just introducing that hot liquid. A little bit more. All right. And then once you get about half of that hot liquid, then we can go ahead and put our pan back on the heat and add in our tempered egg mixture. So again, you're doing it in the reverse, slowly whisking in that egg mixture back in to your coconut milk. And at this point, you'll probably already notice that it is starting to thicken just from the residual heat from the pan. We just want to cook it a little bit longer so that we end up getting just a touch more thickness, a little bit of creaminess. So we'll go to using a spatula, and we want to stir pretty constantly. Again, doing it at that nice sort of low, medium-low heat. Get a nice thick custard. We want it to be nappe, and that term nappe means that it just coats the back of the spoon. So you can see it's already starting to get nice and thick, becoming a little bit more of that really creamy custardy consistency. All right. And we don't want it to boil at this point. For the same reason that we temper our eggs slowly, we want to make sure that it doesn't come to a boil so we don't scramble those eggs. Okay. All right, so I've got my spatula here. I'm going to just dip it in, run my finger across, and if it holds the line, that means we've got a really nice nappe consistency. All right, so then now what I'd recommend for your custards is passing them through a fine mesh strainer. What this is going to do is it's going to take out any potential lumps. It's going to make it extremely creamy and smooth, and it just adds that little extra level of professionalism that we want to teach you as holistic chef students. All right, so just straining it through, getting rid of any potential lumps. All right. So just gently tapping to kind of work it through. And we don't want to press any of these lumps all the way through because then that would kind of defeat the purpose of straining them out. So just gently kind of work through until you get to a point where you have your lumps just left in there. And then we're left with this just beautiful creamy custard. We're going to then add our nice bright lemon zest, fold that in, and then get that chilling. Right. So just set this off to the side. I'm going to have an ice bath ready to go. Let me grab that. It's so hot down here in North Carolina that I can't keep ice outside of my freezer for very long. Otherwise, I wouldn't have ice. I'd just have ice water.
All
All right. Are there any questions so far? All right.
I'm on Maui. This is Janice, and I have to fight humidity. So that would be one thing I'll definitely be interested in learning more about.
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
definitely had challenges baking and making stuff with the weather here.
Yeah, absolutely. The humidity can be it can be a little bit of a nightmare for sure. I'm in North Carolina, we have that humidity too. I don't think quite as bad as you have it.
Yeah.
But just having that consideration, if you're making the pavlova, that's actually a really good point because you have the humidity, leaving that pavlova, leaving that meringue in the oven just until you're ready to serve it will create a drier environment that can keep it a little bit crispier.
Interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I see Mimi, you have a question?
Yeah, will you provide us with the recipe? That looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll have Michelle send that out to you. It's also on the blog post, but we can definitely get you all a link so that you can make this
Yes.
on your own.
Definitely. I'll go
Beautiful.
ahead and make
Thank you
sure we
so
get that to you.
much.
Yeah, wonderful. All right. And so now the final part of this pavlova, it's kind of a three-part. We have our meringue, which is in the oven. We have our custard, which is now cooling. So we'll be able to drizzle that over the top. And then the final part is using all of those beautiful, luscious berries that I was talking about that I'm having real difficulty not just popping in my mouth right now. So this time of year, we have so many berries. This is sort of the tail end of strawberry season, but I was able to get some really nice ones. We have some blackberries, some raspberries, and some beautiful blueberries. So what's great about this, incorporating fruit as a holistic chef into your desserts, you're going to increase the nutrients, your vitamins, also fiber. Berries are really high in fiber, so they can provide, again, that just little boost of nutrition to what is otherwise just a lovely, light, and airy dessert. It also adds in a filling ingredient, so it's very substantial. It just looks really beautiful on the plate, and you also kind of eat with your eyes first. So having a mixture of different colors, lots of beautiful textures is going to sort of make the whole experience really lovely and enjoyable. Okay? So for this, we're making honeyed berries. And what that means is we're actually going to macerate these. And what macerating does is you're adding usually a little bit of salt, a little bit of a sweetener, and that'll actually draw out just a touch of moisture from your fruit so that you end up with this beautiful syrupy sort of sauce with the fruit. Okay? So we need to prepare our strawberries first because I have them separate here. If you have really beautiful looking strawberry tops, which these are still very bright green, they're very vibrant, I actually like leaving them on because it adds this really nice little element and color pop on the top of your dessert. If they are a little bit brown though, feel free to cut them off. So for these, I want to make sure that they're bite size. to kind of match the size of my berries. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my chef's knife, my handy dandy chef's knife. We want to make sure that when we're holding our knife, we have really good control of it. So we recommend pinching the blade. So you can see that my pointer finger and my thumb are actually pinching the blade on either side. And then my three fingers, my pinky, my ring, and my middle finger are actually going to wrap around the handle. This is going to give you the most control side to side so that your knife can stay very vertical, gives you the most control and the most pressure downward so that you can cut things even that are really hard, like a sweet potato or a carrot. Strawberries aren't nearly that hard, but it's really important to learn this or unlearn the other way. So we're just going to cut down the middle. And you can just see how beautiful that looks. Just that little bit of green is going to really pop on the top of our pavlova. Okay, so we're going to go through. Again, just cut down the middle. Having your guide hand, so your guide hand is the hand that is not holding your knife, you want to make sure that you protect those fingertips. So we tell you to put your fingers in a claw shape so that your fingertips are protected and that you don't really have any chance of slicing them with your knife. Okay? The knife is going to hit your knuckles before it hits anything else. Okay? So just getting all of these beautiful berries into this bowl. And like I said, if you have strawberries, if you have anything that the tops are a little bit brown, that's perfectly fine. You can just cut off the very top. And I actually really like to save these as well. I put them in my smoothies. It's just a little bit extra fiber, tasty. So just cutting down the middle, making it bite sized. If I had larger strawberries, I could even cut them in quarters. And we want about a pound of fruit for this because we want the fruit to almost be the highlight. The meringue and the custard are vessels for just this beautiful bowl of fruit. Okay. All right, so now we're going to do our maceration. And what that is, again, is just adding a little bit of salt. Again, salt, very important, bringing out the flavor. We're going to add this little bit of honey. Again, this is a local raw honey, and you don't need much, just about a tablespoon, if that, depending on how sweet your berries are. And it's always a good idea to taste your berries too before you do anything to them, whether that's adding seasonings, adding sweeteners, because if you're getting peak season fruit, it's going to be really sweet already. So it may not need a lot of honey to help it out. And then the last thing we're going to do is add just a little squeeze of that lemon. Remember, we used that lemon zest in our custard. And now we're going to use some of the lemon juice to just brighten up our berries, give us a little extra vitamin C, and just a little tang to go with that sweetness. All right. I'm just going to stir that up. And you can see just how glossy that little bit of liquid, that little bit of honey, it's already drawing out some of the moisture of our berries. And we're going to let that sit just for a moment, just so that it can continue to draw out that moisture and make this beautiful sauce. All right, and then we're just waiting for our custard to cool. So I'd love to open it up just to a couple questions while we're waiting for everything to sit for a few minutes, and then we'll get back to plating it up. So any questions on the recipe so far or questions on the program as well, we can talk about that too while we're waiting for our custard to cool down. No, just really excited. Yeah, Caitlin, go ahead.
Hi, this is looking so delicious. My question is just around if you did want to prepare the custard with dairy, what kind of dairy product would you use for that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So for a really nice pastry cream or rich custard, I would recommend a mixture of a grass-fed whole milk mixed with grass-fed cream. So if you do about half and half, you'll get that beautiful creamy consistency that kind of mimics that full-fat coconut milk texture.
Delicious. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Yeah, and this coconut custard is just so creamy. It's so rich and wonderful. And it doesn't take too long to cool down. So, what I've done, I've staged out my prep. So we've got our pavlova cooking in the oven. Obviously, it's going to take about 2 hours to be completely done. But like I said, I've got some movie magic. So I've got one ready to go so we can put it together. All right, so I just want to show you My coconut custard has been cooling now. It's kind of thickened up. It's almost like this pudding consistency. And what's really great about coconut is that as soon as it gets chilled, as soon as it goes into the refrigerator, it will actually continue to tighten up. So you can have this really beautiful sort of thick, creamy custard that holds onto your pavlova really, really nicely. Okay. All right, so you can see how nice and smooth it is, just using the whisk to make sure that all of that lemon zest is well incorporated. And then what we want to do before we put everything together is we want to give everything a little bit of a taste. So tasting is so important as a chef. We want to make sure that we kind of taste throughout the process so that once we combine all of those ingredients, we have really nice balance. So I'm going to grab a tasting spoon and just dip into my coconut custard. Oh, it's so good. You have the creaminess, the richness from the coconut milk, that just little hint of sweetness. You don't need a lot because that coconut milk is already just a little bit sweet on its own. So just that tablespoon or so of honey just brings that really beautiful level of sweetness up just a little bit. And then we've got that little bit of salt that kind of rounds out all of the flavor. It actually kind of makes you drool a little bit because it wakes up all of those taste buds. Okay. So if you needed to at this point, though, if you're noticing that it's not quite as sweet as you want, you could absolutely just fold in a little bit more honey. But I'm pretty happy where that is right now. And then we'll also test our berries again, see how they're doing. So I'm going to take a blackberry because why not? Again, so blackberries, raspberries, they're naturally a little bit more tart. They have that, levels of vitamin C in there, that little bit of almost acidity. So that little bit of honey kind of rounds that out, makes this really beautiful, still tangy and tart because you've got that lemon juice in there, still beautifully and fresh because if you got that fresh local sun-kissed berries, but that little bit of honey just brings it up so that you have that roundness and fullness of flavor. Okay. Wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put my pavlova together. So again, movie magic, pretend that a couple hours have passed. So this is my meringue. This is the one that I made earlier this morning. You can see it's got some nice color on it, and this is mostly from the honey. Traditionally, a lot of pavlovas that are made with white sugar don't get this beautiful sort of golden color. So I really like that. You can see actually on the underneath that we've got some really beautiful, pristine kind of like marshmallowy meringue in the middle, but we have this gorgeous golden color that's going to kind of go with all of our other colors that we have prepared. So we're going to grab a little bit of that coconut custard. All right. We want to kind of top it off, sort of fill in the center. This also works really beautifully just with some whipped cream, so some lightly sweetened whipped cream. But I wanted to make sure that we could use up our egg yolks because that's always the hardest thing. When you're making a recipe that has a ton of egg whites, you're just sitting with egg yolks. So we made a custard today. All right, so again, just fill that up. Got this really nice sort of pale yellow color to kind of match or go with our golden meringue. Kind of make sure we've got a nice little bit of coverage. And then the fun part, the colorful part, all of these beautiful berries. Okay. So I like using a slotted spoon for this just because already just sitting and macerating, I'm getting all of this lovely juice. You can see at the bottom of the bowl. So I don't want to put that on until I'm ready to serve. So I want to just use, kind of dry off my berries a little bit. It's okay if a little bit of juice gets in there. But the pavlova is definitely a dessert that you want to serve immediately. You've got that crisp meringue on the outside that you want to make sure you still get that beautiful crunchy texture. And then you have all of these beautiful luscious berries. I feel like luscious. Luscious is a great word for these berries. So just filling it in. And what's great about this dessert is that it's nice and rustic, but just so beautiful. You have all of these colors. We don't need to be fussy about it. We're just trying to make a really beautiful, filling, fruit-forward dessert. And you can see how those little bits of green from the stems kind of pop. There are these nice little color pops. that really just elevate the look of the dessert. Mhm. And then finally, if you want to add any other additional ingredients, one thing that I really like to do and that I talk about in class a lot is functional garnish. And what a functional garnish is, a garnish that sort of tells you what is in the dish. So for this, we have some really lovely coconut custard. Well, coconut custard is sometimes an allergen. It is classified as a nut, but most people don't have an allergy to it if they have a tree nut allergy. But something really important to note. So what I like to do for this one when I'm using that coconut custard is just putting some lightly toasted coconut over the top. One, because it gives some really nice crunch, but also as a reminder that, oh, that custard's got coconut in it. So make sure that your client, your customer, your family member, whoever is eating it knows that, right? So just beautiful, bright, beautiful flavors of the summer. And yeah, I think Janice, I think you had a question.
Yes, I did have a question, a couple of them. So in this program, do you guys teach on how to calculate for like bulk cooking and baking? And then that's great. And then do you also help, do you teach on how to create like nutrition label content?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So we do a lot with scaling and costing. So both in your fundamentals class, which is going to be sort of the first 6 weeks, you'll start on scaling. So that'll teach you how to convert recipes, to make bulk recipes, how you sort of scale those ingredients up, because it's not always a one-to-one. So you'll get a lot of that in first the fundamentals course. And then once you get into your business course, which is at the end of the program, you'll learn a lot more about costing. So using that scaling, understanding costing, so that you can then price things out for your business more effectively. And then as far as the nutrition facts, we don't necessarily do caloric calculation. We do use the Modern Meal Suite though. And Modern Meal is great. It's a whole application that we give you in the program that actually can go through, give you nutrition facts for all of the recipes that you're making. And you can actually continue to use that after the program if you choose to pay for it as a professional. So it's a really great resource that we sort of get you a discount on while you're, working in the program and immediately after. So we'll get you used to using that so that you can do that nutrition content. And then we do talk a lot about the nutrition of the food that we're using. So your lessons every week will go into things like, the vitamins, nutrients, minerals that are found in your food, the nutritive benefits, and then also you'll eventually get into more of the holistic cooking where you're cooking for clients for different specific dietary needs.
That is awesome.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
One last question. Are there is it like a weekly live demo that we're doing each for our class throughout the year?
Yeah, so we'll get into this, I think, a little bit more in Michelle's presentation, but you have a weekly virtual class. That's 2 hours long every week, and then you'll have additional lessons, activities, and labs that you'll complete on your own.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. I love the questions. Keep them coming. Great. Well, just one more time, I wanted to show you sort of our finished pavlova, and then I will pass it back to Michelle. So again, we just have all of these beautiful fruits. We have our crispy meringue that's nice and marshmallowy in the center. We have that sort of silky coconut custard, just a really nice, refreshing summer dessert. So I hope you get the chance to make it and enjoy it. And I just have to look at this for the next half an hour before I get to eat any of it. So.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How would you serve that? Would you cut it in pieces, or how would that be served?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, if you were doing this for clients for, a dinner party, what's great about that meringue is that you can actually make little individual pavlovas. So that's one way that you can make it look really professional for an individual service, just making tiny little almost cupcake pavlovas. But this is more rustic. This is, if you're sitting around a table, I would say you can slice it well with a serrated blade. If you have like a bread knife or a serrated knife, you can get some nice little slices. And then of course, your fruit will just sort of cascade off of the sides. So,
okay, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.